Hi, everyone. I just wanted to take a moment to welcome you to Developing Student Leaders in Performing Ensembles. So to kick things off, my name is Karla Bell, also known as the Graceful Educator. I'm a wife, a mama, a daughter, sister, and friend. I have 16 years in education, have a bachelor's in music education, a master's in school leadership. I teach in Delaware, and I love the beach. I love reading, I love learning, and I love grace. And we're going to talk about that in just a second. And so before we get started with our training, I just wanted to briefly share with you the lenses that I look through when I share my experiences, any training and presentations. I want you to know the lenses that I look through, and they are that of equity, anti-racism, trauma, being trauma-informed, restorative, social emotional leadership, justice, liberation, hope, humanity, joy, and love. And so all of the information that you will be listening to is grounded in this work. And I hope that it is helpful for you. So the space of grace is something that is very meaningful to me. And it's something that I created really in my own classroom space because there was a need for it. I noticed students that were so hard on themselves. I was hard on myself, and I knew we just needed a safe place. And so we came up with this concept of the space of grace. And I'll share with you what that means. So it's the community and its members are safe, valued, consulted, embraced, developed, empowered, and honored. Mistakes are resources, not weapons. Process and progress are valued over perfection. Healthy risk-taking is encouraged in spite of the outcome. And we genuinely, authentically demonstrate care and concern, serve others, and create positive change. So before I move forward, I just want you to think for a second, which one of these statements for you resonates? Which one, like, ooh, they hit me right in the heart? So I'll give you a second to think about that. For me, it is always mistakes are resources and not weapons. So, you know, we live in a time and a culture where we make mistakes and we're canceled. But the space of grace says, I learn from the mistakes that I make, and I realize that they are resources that I can always refer to and use at any time. So my PD style is I present a lot of questions and concepts with examples because your scenario is different than my scenario. There is no one size fits all solution. A lot of times there are things that really just require us to make an intentional decision. And so I'm not going to give you every little detail because you have to do what works best for you in your space. Questions are more powerful than answers. So you're going to find that I ask a lot of questions because I feel like that is the way that you're going to get to the answers and solutions that work best for you and your learners. I do offer time for you to think and lift. You'll hear me pause and give you a few moments to jot something down or think, because it's really important that you get it for yourself. I also want you to know that I'm a resource and not the source. I'm not the authoritative source on student leadership. I am just sharing a perspective and point of view. So I want to encourage you to continue to look and research and learn and grow in this topic and get what you need. I also don't have all the answers. I'm a learner before I'm an educator. And so I'm always, you know, having the posture of a learner, and I always will. So just know that I am learning alongside you. All right, so let's get started. Developing student leaders in performing ensembles. So our goals are to rethink the teacher role in the music performance classroom, concepts and strategies for appointing and developing student leaders, and then available resources for ongoing training, support, and evaluation. So I want to share with you why this all matters, why student leadership, student voice, why it matters. The truth is, community really builds us, it heals us, it matures us. And if we haven't learned anything from lockdowns and the pandemic, we realized how important it is to be and stay connected. Being connected is so important to our mental and emotional health, our physical health. It's important to our wellness overall. And when we don't have the ability to be a part of community, things lack. We go without, our community goes without. And so student leadership really helps establish and maintain community in and beyond the classroom. Student leadership is also a pillar of equity, right? So equity isn't just about race, it's about power, and it's distributing power and access to the people who need it. And so having a student leadership program really is a great way to distribute your power and your access to the students who need it. And then they can in turn pass that on to others. Okay. Students who have a voice in their experiences, their education, are invested. They're invested in the program, they're invested in the community, and they're going to encourage other people to do the same. So it's just a win-win all the way around. And then lastly, we all need opportunities to expose and use our gifts. You're gifted. Your students are gifted. No matter what behavior they display, they have so much potential to go out and change the world for the better. But we want to make sure that we offer them opportunities to be able to do so. So the first thing I want to share with you about the student leadership concept is the fact that we have to decenter, right? It's not about us. I always share with people, like, we are not the flex. Educators are not the flex. We are not the ones that the focus should be on. It really should be all about the students. And so when we go through this like decentering process, it actually starts with us because we have to be honest about who we are and what's on our plate so that we can move or delegate what's on our plate, which is a part of the decentering process. So the first question I want to ask you is, what roles, tasks, and responsibilities are currently on your plate? Currently on your plate. I want to give you a minute to jot some things down about what exactly is on your educator plate. What do you do every day? And I want you to list these things. And I don't care how big or small, how insignificant you might think these tasks are. I want you to write them all down, type them, open up a Google Doc or something. And I want you to type out the tasks that you do every single day. Again, doesn't matter the size, but I want you to write down the tasks that you complete every day, okay? If you have to pause to write that down, do so. The second question I want to ask you is, what keeps you from trusting students with certain things on your plate? What keeps you from trusting students with certain things on your plate? Now, I recognize there's some things on your plate that just won't be able to go because it's contractual or it has to do with privacy or safety. And I'm not necessarily speaking about those things, but there's some other things that you do that I'm sure students can do, but you may have trouble trusting them with them. So the second question I want to ask you is, what keeps you from trusting students with certain things on your plate? And again, you can pause it, and I want you to jot down those thoughts and be honest about how you feel about giving tasks or empowering students, and if that makes you nervous or anxious. So as your brain is kind of working with that, I want to go through kind of the student leadership choice process. The student leadership choice process. So what is leadership? Leadership is the use of access and power and authority to empower and serve others and to maintain and encourage community. The key word in that definition here is serve. It's serve, right? A lot of times people think that leadership is about being in control or having all the power. And unfortunately, we live in a society where it's a status symbol, right? To have a lot of power and a lot of control. But the truth is, true leadership, true effective leadership really has to do with service. And it has to do with using your power and your access to empower and serve others, okay? Everybody has leadership skills. Everybody does. From the student who drives you the most crazy to the student that you're like, I love it when they show up. Everybody has leadership skills. The key, though, is that those leadership skills have to be cultivated and developed, right? There's no person that you encounter that doesn't have leadership skills. It just probably needs to be developed. Remember, leadership is a service opportunity. And lastly, it is an investment. Leadership is an investment, okay? Just like you would practice how to learn a new skill, leadership is also something that must be developed and practiced. It is an investment. There are going to be some things that you start that you're going to see a change right away. And there are going to be some other things where it's going to take some time and you're going to have to invest, not just in yourself, but in your learners. All right. But here's what gets in the way of student leadership, right? It's gatekeeping. And unfortunately, as teachers, we are usually very guilty of gatekeeping. It's us, okay? Are there people above us that are guilty of it? Of course. But today we're talking about us, right? And so what is a gatekeeper, or what is gatekeeping? It is controlling or limiting access to something. It is limiting access to something. All right. Now you may say, you don't understand. I give everything I have to my scholars. But there are some things that really we are hoarding or holding, and we have not given them the access that they really need. So let me share with you how gatekeeping shows up when we're choosing student leaders or developing student leaders. I teach music. And so when we are going through our student leadership process, or choosing student leaders or electing student leaders, prior to us doing this, there were some ways that gatekeeping showed up, not just in my program, but all over the place. And one of the ways is if your audition process or your leadership process is only through you or through adults, that is a gatekeeping issue, okay? If it's only adults in the room who are proctoring the interviews that are deciding who gets elected, if you are only offering auditions and interviews in the evening or on the weekend when maybe transportation is more limited, and that would keep certain students out of auditioning. If you only offer your audition or interview in one format or one language, especially with the understanding that you have students that may speak another language. And then here's the biggest one, I think. There are certain students, you don't even want them interviewing. You don't want them auditioning. You don't want them applying. You don't want them to be a part of it based on maybe behavior that you've seen or something that you've heard, or maybe somebody told you something about them, okay? So these are examples of how gatekeeping shows up in the student leadership selection process. And if we were to be completely honest, sometimes it shows up in the performance classroom in general. There are certain students that we don't want in our space. And music, a lot of times, has the ability to choose, especially in upper level ensembles. We have the ability to choose who is in our space. So I want to ask you, what criteria are you really using to either allow access or restrict access to the space? So I want you to think about two questions. And again, this is a place where you may want to jot some things down, pause it. But there are two questions that I want you to think about. The first question is, do students with the highest GPAs make the best leaders? And then the second question is, do the best musicians make the best leaders? So I want you to pause and I want you to jot down your thoughts about this. Do students with the highest GPAs make the best leaders, or do musicians, the best musicians, make the best leaders? And you have to be able to defend your answer, okay? So let's keep moving. When we think about developing student leadership positions, we have to think about, what do the students need the leader to do? So student leadership positions aren't always traditional. It isn't just based on what you want or what you think is needed. It's based on what the students say or suggest is needed in concert with what you think. So it's not just you, it's everybody in the community. And then we ask, what do you need the leaders to do? But it's always student-centered. It's students first. What does the student need a student leader to do? Okay. Needs determine position types and task lists. So after you've spoken with the students about the type of leader that they might need, and you're thinking about the type of leader that might be needed for the organization or the ensemble, then everybody's got to sit down and say, okay, well, you express this and you express this. Based on what we need, these are the types of positions that we need to create, okay? And these are the types of tasks that go with these positions, okay? These tasks aren't just menial, like, oh, you put paper clips on all the packets, okay? Well, there might be some of those type of tasks. You really want to make sure there are tasks and responsibilities that build capacity in students for opportunities of all types, okay? Because remember, even though they're part of your music community, they're part of other communities as well. And we want this leadership process in the program to really just not just benefit them in the music space or in your space, but in spaces abroad, okay? If you're not sure what's needed, ask them. Ask the students, okay? Do a survey, do a discussion post, do a class discussion, set a timer for 10 minutes and say, hey guys, what is it that we need? What do you think we need? And then once you hear from them, actually implement what they said. There is nothing worse than having feedback or having an idea and somebody was like, oh, I heard you. And then they roll their eyes and still do what they want to do anyway. Isn't that frustrating? We do that to our students all the time. We get their feedback and then we ignore it, especially if we think their feedback is not good or not quality. It is. It is good, okay? So you wanna make sure that you actually use the feedback that they give, all right? Anybody who's a part of student leadership program, okay, should have a desire to serve, not control. You know, once upon a time, student leadership, and it may still be true in your organization, your school, where leadership positions were like a popularity contest, or I wanna be in student leadership because I wanna be in control. Well, we already talked about from the very beginning that leadership is a service. It's a service. And so folks that are a part of student leadership really need to have a mind and a heart to serve others, okay? Ultimately, it should be the student's choice. That doesn't mean you're not going to have a say, but remember, we're working on this decentering process where it's not so much about me, it's more about the students, okay? So this should ultimately be the student's choice, okay? Here's the kicker though. It has to reflect the current and the potential membership, okay? Demographics and interests. I want to suggest something. I want to suggest that if you have a membership problem, you probably have a leadership problem, okay? A lot of times I hear from fellow music educators that say, I'm missing this type of student in the class. I don't have enough Black and brown students in the choir or in the band. And you might have a few, but you haven't lifted them. You haven't given them necessarily an opportunity to lead, okay? Your leadership should always be a reflection of the current and potential membership. What kind of students do you want in the space? Okay, remember, everybody has leadership potential. It may need to be developed or cultivated, but everybody has it. So are there students that are getting overlooked? And would they be able to draw members that are missing from your ensemble? It's something to think about. Student leaders should not necessarily be your favorite student, okay? That question I asked you earlier, are they the best musicians or do they have the highest GPA? They may not necessarily have either of them, but what they have is a heart to serve others. They have a heart to help. okay? And those folks may not have the highest GPAs. They may not be the best musician. They may be decent, they might be good, but with some practice, they might be a whole lot better, okay? But these are folks that have a heart to really help people get from point A to point B, right? This is the reason why I asked the questions that I asked you. It's because a lot of times by default, we think that students with the highest GPA or students that are performing the highest, we think they're going to be great leaders, when in actuality, they may not even have a desire to help. They may just want to be a great musician, and that's the end of the story. But we're really looking for people that are have a heart for others, okay, when it comes to leadership. Here's some other things I want you to think about and consider when we're developing student leadership programs, or, you know, as you're kind of looking through your ensemble, your program, about who are some students that really would make great student leaders that I might have overlooked, or the students might have overlooked. Is that leadership potential and desire, is it present? Are they the ones that are always staying after to help, set up, break down, just happen to always be around? How can I support you? Always willing to serve others, okay? Here's the second question I want to ask you. Will they need intentional development, whether it be as a musician or as just a human? What do they need? What support will they need? And then lastly, which leadership and social skills did students lose the opportunity to develop because of COVID? So understand, you're going to have students that are going to be great leaders, but they're going to need a little more, really, because we were in lockdown for 2 years, almost 2 years, right? Or we were virtual. And so they missed out on the opportunity to really connect and be a part of community with other people. And so when you train them, they're going to need some support, and they're going to need some resources and some practice on how to work with others and how to lead others with a heart of service and support. Okay. So when I usually do student leadership choice, it's held in June after the seniors leave. Why do you do that? I do it because I don't want seniors to interfere with voting. I don't want them to interfere with any of the processes that come with students making choices on their own, okay? Plus two, once you get to a certain point in the year after your final performance, it's a great opportunity to use some of that downtime to look forward and get excited about what's coming, okay? I put out a student leadership application, and the application really is designed based on the feedback that the students gave me earlier, right? About what type of leader they need. So we just generate questions based on that feedback, and anyone who's interested in student leadership fills out the application, and the members get a chance to see the answers from the people who are interested in student leadership. Some of those folks who are interested in leadership might do a video to introduce themselves, and we show it to the class, or they will get up and talk with the class one-on-one. They might facilitate a discussion so that students have the opportunity to get to know them and ask them questions that under normal circumstances they may not have had the time to ask, especially if it's somebody they're unfamiliar with, okay? And then the students vote. They vote, okay? Now, I know you're probably asking me, when do I have a say? When do I have a say in who is elected? I'm afraid that the kids are going to choose a bad leader. Well, all throughout this process, remember, we asked them what type of leader they would need, what type of leader they felt like would be great for the organization or for your program or for your ensemble. So right from the very beginning, our members have been invested in this process. And they know that they're going to have to work with this person for the next school year. And what I've found is when they're invested from the very beginning, they make really good choices, right? This is also an opportunity to teach our students about the importance of doing their research and getting to know the people that are interested in service, interested in leading, which is a great life skill, especially based on everything we've been through, right? The ability to research and get to know the person that could possibly be elected to this position, not just because we like them or, you know, we've encountered them before, but because we took the time to do our research and we feel like my vote will go toward the person I think will best serve this organization. Students, I use Google Forms and I have it secured, so they have to log into their school account. They can only vote once. And you can set up things like that to make it secure. But again, the students really take time to get to know the people who are interested in leadership before they have to decide, who's going to take those places. And so this is the way that we set up our leadership kind of chart this past school year. And if you notice, there are different types of leaders, because based on the feedback that the students gave, these are the types of leaders they said would be really helpful in our organization. So of course, I'm the director of vocal music, and I have the things that I have. A lot of those things, again, are contractual. They have to do with safety and they have to do with privacy. But if you take a look at the other positions, choir assistants, section leaders, student aides, these are the positions that the students created. And if you take a look at what's under it, each of those positions has specific tasks that they do throughout the school year. And so me as the director, I don't have to go, man, what am I going to do with them? What am I going to do with them? How do I need to make sure my leaders are utilized? Remember, we built this from the very beginning. What is it that we felt like our leaders needed to be able to oversee and do, and make sure they're mature enough and developed enough to be able to handle these responsibilities, right? But these are the things that they felt was important. The other type of leader, and if you notice, is at the bottom of the slide. The other type of leader that we did come up with this year was called the listening leader. The listening leader. We realized that once we returned from COVID, that students really didn't have a lot of established relationships, and they felt like they just needed someone to talk to that would, hold their information in confidence, and someone that they could trust that would just be a good listener. And so we established listening leaders, people who just have a heart and a gift of listening and empathy. We have 2 of them, one in each of the choir class periods. And people can make an appointment with the listening leader, and they can meet with them on Zoom or during lunch or after school. And they're really just a positive way for students to interact and talk with one another, and to share the things that are on their heart, and know that what they're saying is not going to be shared with others, it's shared in confidence. And so these were positions that, students in my ensemble said, these are the things that we think are really important that would really help our organization grow. There's something else I want to bring to your attention is section leaders are also responsible for recruitment and retention. One of the things I hear music directors say, man, I got to recruit more kids. I got to recruit more kids. And I'm like, do you have kids recruit kids? Because they're the ones that are going to help other people come in, right? So recruiting doesn't just fall on my plate, because a kid will get a kid. If they're enjoying their experience, if they're a part of community, they're a part of something that matters, they're going to go find other students like them to say, hey, you should be a part of this. That's why it's important that from a demographic standpoint, that you have beautiful representation in your leadership, because they're going to go get folks that are like them. And then that is how it grows. And once those new folks get there, they have an immediate connection point, like, that's my friend, and we're in choir together. And it could be band, anything like that. And so recruitment and retention doesn't just fall on my plate or the assistant director plate. It falls on everybody's plate, because we are all responsible for growing our community. So the next thing I want to talk about, is capacity, collaboration, and evaluation. So once you've kind of decided what you want these leaders to do, the types of leaders you want to have, your students have kind of gone through the voting process and all of that, you now need to train them. They need to go through, some development activities and things like that, so that they can operate the best that they can and really serve well. So at this point, now that they've, elected their leaders, and again, I've been monitoring and watching the whole time, okay? During that interaction time, I'm also interacting with that student leader. Okay, so these are the types of things that that student leader will need development in, especially post-COVID. they're going to need development and support in understanding identity, perspective, and experience, recognizing that their experience is not everybody's experience. Musicianship, making sure that they are, from a music standpoint, very sound. Do they have the foundational skills needed to support the members in their groups? Okay. Conflict resolution, based on scenarios that students submit. Are they able to collaborate and build community and have empathy for others? Are they strong communicators? Do they manage their time well? Are they organized? And are they able to accept feedback from fellow classmates and from me? Okay. So if you look on the right-hand side of the screen, these are the types of resources I've used. Everything from TED Talks to YouTube videos to book studies to podcasts. We play games together. We've played a game called Stuff Happens, which talks about all different types of scenarios that life will bring and how you would navigate those things. We play games together. There are certain TikTok videos and Instagram reels that we've used really as training tools, because there's some great resources out there that will help build our capacity. And so here's kind of like what a training period would look like, how I would train student leaders, how I train student leaders. And I usually bring them in a couple of days before school starts. Teachers are in the building anyway at that point. And so I bring in the student leaders and we train for 3 days. I also feed them because I have teenagers, feed them, I always feed them. But we do 3 days of training. And so every day we start with team building, getting to know you, and leadership activities. Things that just build their general capacity, that really develop that social emotional learning piece, that trauma informed piece. I build it in them as well, because they're going to be interacting with people and people have stories. And so I build that capacity in them as well. Okay. We also play and we sing for fun. We do karaoke. We might do song association. We play music games. We do basic musicianship principles. We do some sight singing. We learn songs by rote. We do all types of things that really establish that core. And then I do what's called cup filling, where I just pour encouragement into their cups, into their hearts, because serving is no joke. And you and I both know that. And so I really take time to intentionally encourage them and give them things to think about along the way. Day one training talks about the mission and vision of our school and our department. The department that I serve in, we currently have a statement: character, commitment, and musicianship. Those are our core values. And it's something that we just came up with as a department. If you don't have something like that, I recommend that you do so. Get together with your department friends and say, hey, what matters to us? And then once you decide, have the kids give some feedback. What matters to us? And you'll come together and come up with something amazing that you all can kind of stick with and honor. But we talk about and we unpack those things. We talk about the structure of the organization. We talk about the power and purpose of community, leadership as service. And then I also give some training on the resources I know they're going to need throughout the school year to be successful. So it might be an online piano keyboard. It might be sight singing sites, certain videos that I want them to be able to use consistently. So any resources, manipulatives, things like that, materials, I train them how to use them during this time. Day two, we start the same as day one, but we talk about rehearsal and organization culture and procedures, how to run sectionals and small groups. This is also where we gather feedback and we start to plan for the year, what we want the year to look like as a whole. And then day three, we start the same way we started day 1 and 2. And then we start to solve some student generated scenarios. So it's not just me, they ask a question, how would you solve it? No, we solve together as a community. And we think about all the things that may have happened the previous year, issues we may have encountered, or issues that we anticipate happening. And again, we do this as a community, as a leadership community. It's not just what I think. A lot of this is what students come with and we solve together. And again, we gather more feedback and continue to plan. And so this is just kind of an idea on how I did training for our students before they came back to school. So when we started school, we were able to reintroduce our student leadership core, the different things that they do and how they are going to be a great resource to the community. All right. The goal of training is really to front load okay? I'm front loading leaders with the resources and opportunities to develop, mature, and grow, all right? Before their duties ever begin, I want them to start with a full cup because I recognize the school year, and just like us, the school year gets weary, the school year gets long. But I want to front load them with as much as I can to make sure that they have what they need as they're serving, okay? Now, I also train throughout the school year. We do quarterly summits, which I'll talk about soon, but we do quarterly summits where it's a bit of training, a cup filling, if you will. We have some time to fellowship, and then we troubleshoot and do student scenarios. So they might bring a problem that might be coming up in their small group or their sectional, and we problem solve together as a leadership community. I cannot express to you how important it is that you take time to pour into your student leaders, okay? Service pulls from us, okay? We pour out, so it's important that you personally pour into students. How do you pour into students if you are empty? It's a serious question. It's really hard to encourage students when you're struggling yourself. So I want to encourage you, right? You, the educator, to make sure that your cup is full. Make sure that you're around people and you are gathering resources and you're a part of opportunities that fill your cup. So that way, when you have student leaders who need support, when you have other learners that need support, your cup is full enough to be able to pour out, okay? A lot of times we think our student leaders, oh, they're good, they got it, they're good, they're great, they're just great kids, right? You hear that a lot. But the thing about it is our overachievers, our students who are high performers, they need just as much support as our students who may not be performing as high or as quickly. They need just as much support. And just because you think they're good doesn't mean they really are. So please don't think for a second that your overachievers, your high achievers, don't need your encouragement. They don't need your support. No, they do. In fact, a lot of them struggle with anxiety and perfectionism and all of those cluster isms, right? So we want to make sure that we support and encourage them. The last point is leaders sharpen other leaders. When you're around somebody that's got it, that's got that spark like you do, you're going to be encouraged and you're going to be challenged as well. All right. So I also rethought small groups and sectionals. A lot of times you just go in, let's just run the music and then go back. Now it's it's a little we structure it a little differently, and it does have some social emotional parts to it, where our student leaders check in with their fellow group mates, and each group mate checks in with one another, ask them how they're doing, share a victory, something just fun. What are you watching on Netflix? What are you binge watching right now? We give announcements and reminders during sectionals. We ask our group members, hey, what areas are you struggling with? And while I may have shared, hey, please make sure you go over measures this to this when you're in small group sectionals today, but there also may be some other things that that student group may be struggling with. And so that leader will also go over those things in small group sectionals as well. Before I send them to sectionals and small group, I front load everything that they need. So we happen to use Schoology as our learning management system. So I might put their voice parts in Schoology already. The choral scores are there. Their online piano keyboard is there. So everything they could possibly need to run a successful sectional is right at their fingertips. They take their Chromebook with them. They take their music stands with them, whatever it is they need. And everything that they need is there, okay? I do not send students to sectionals to teach a new concept. It is always review. Even if they're reviewing sight singing, it is still skills that they're familiar with, because we learn new together. And that also gives that leader the opportunity to ask questions and to make sure they're comfortable and confident before they go to small group sectionals to reinforce. Okay. The other thing that I do is I offer evaluation and support. And so once a quarter, we do student leader evaluations. So the members in their small group or the members in their sectional actually take time to evaluate their section leader. And what I do is, if you notice, like here's an example on the screen. What I've done is you put your name and your date at the top, but if you notice there's like this dotted line, I cut the name off because I count it as a grade, okay? Because it's critically thinking, it's error analysis, it's a lot of different things of those higher order skills that we know students really need. But I asked them to pretty much give feedback on their section leader. What's going well, what's not working, what is your section leader or your small group leader really, really great at? What areas do you feel like they need some improvement in, and how can we support you? And then I give those evaluations after I've cut the name off the top, I give them to that section leader so that they have the opportunity to see how they're being perceived by their group members, or if they're doing something that may or may not be helpful. We talk about evaluations at our quarterly summits. And again, we do those quarterly summits once a quarter. I serve them lunch. And we talk about a leadership topic. We do some community building. We go over our evaluations, and then we troubleshoot. And of course, I do some pouring into and encouraging as well. As I shared a second ago, I have a place. We use Schoology, but you might use Google Classroom. You might use Canvas. Whatever it is, this is the place where I store everything that they need for them to be successful, not just the members, but our student leaders. And so anything they could possibly need, I just throw it in their group, their Schoology group, and make sure that they have access to those resources. So a couple of questions that I typically get asked about student leadership. How early do you bring your leaders in? Usually a week or two before school starts. It's all based on the calendar. And we spend 3 full days together. I feed them lunch. We have snacks. It's a whole deal. We have really great transportation that we have in our building. Like we have access to vans and things like that. But if you do not, feel free to hold this on Zoom. Like you can still make this amazing and interactive on Zoom if your students are unable to get to the building. You have lots of ways to be able to hold this training. You could also record some things, do some things in person. You might do the first couple of days of school before things really get up and running. You all might have after school buses, whatever works for your students, and ask them from a transportation perspective, ask them what works for them, okay? How long are your sectionals? Sectionals can range, well, we have 1.5-hour class periods, so sectionals could range anywhere from 15 to 45 minutes. So it just is based on really what's on the docket for the day, what's on our plate, what needs to be worked on, and then we kind of go from there and kind of gauge it. I also ask the students what they need. A question I always ask my kids, is this a me thing or is this a you thing, right? What does that mean? That means, is this something I need to reteach or teach them intentionally, and we take time to do that together? Or is it something that they need practice with in small groups? Like, is it something that just needs a bunch of reps? Or they're like, now we know it, but we don't know it, right? And so they'll share that with me and I'll say, okay, so let's use our small group or our sectional time today for running it over and over again until we're confident. And while they're in sectionals, I take a walk and I walk around and I listen to sectionals, and I may offer feedback from time to time, but they're really so good. Once they build that culture, they're so good about staying on task, evaluating what they're doing, and then making adjustments. What do you do if you have a bad or ineffective leader? Great question. Okay. A lot of times so far, I've only had one. I've only had one ineffective leader since we've implemented this process. And again, it's because students invested in it from the very beginning. So they were really mindful about the type of leader that they chose because they don't want to sound bad, right? But the one ineffective leader I did have, we actually did a restorative circle. Because the leader was not committed. They didn't show up to class all the time. It was a bunch of different things that were just happening all at once. And so I did a restorative circle with them. I sat in and we talked about it out loud together during a sectional, okay? And that leader had the opportunity to talk about their perspective and their point of view. And then I met with that leader one-on-one, and it was decided that it was best for that leader to step down. What the group then did is they chose someone else in their sectional group to lead. And I moved that leader to a different sectional group. I did not make them stay in that group. I moved them to another group within their voice part, okay? And so it is, as long as you're transparent and restorative in nature, even ineffective leaders can learn through the process, okay? The key is remembering that students are still maturing. So we're not going to, bash them and tell them they're terrible, none of that, because they're still learning and growing and understanding what commitment and service is all about, right? But it also shows students, oh, I made this choice about this person. I thought they were equipped, but they're really not. And so it also caused them to take a step back and reevaluate where they want to put their vote next time we have leader elections. Doesn't this take up your personal time? Yes. Yes, it does. But I will tell you that a lot of that is front loaded. So it may take a bit of time at the front end of the school year, but it's so good. It maintains itself throughout the school year. I can't tell you how much time I've saved because of student leadership. And there are times, I'd say one lunch a marking period I lose. And I don't even call it a loss. I call it an investment. Because as I shared from the very beginning, leadership is all about investment. It's an investment. And so when you invest in your students and you invest in the program, it pays dividends back. I can't tell you how refreshing it was. By the time I got to April, I was exhausted. And the student leadership program was strong enough that they were like, no, we got it. We're going to sectionals and we're going to work on a couple of things, but we got it. When we come back, we'll be ready to go over X, Y, and Z. And when I tell you they had it, they had it. And so when you invest up front, especially when you sow that time in the beginning, it pays off, especially later on in the year. I've had someone ask me like, well, how did you get the money to pay for their lunches and things like that? You'd be surprised what administration will cover. Okay, especially if you have a vision for it, you have an idea. And everybody right now is interested in student voice and choice. Everybody right now is interested in equity. And so you just need to ask and say, this is what I'm interested in. It's going to grow our program. It's going to develop capacity in our students. Let them know. Tell them what this is for. And I promise you, somebody's going to find you some money. You can also do a donor's choose. There are lots of ways to get this done. We sell snacks all year long. And so that money that we raise from snacks, it helps to pay for some of our student leadership opportunities, our field trips, the whole nine. And so there might be a small little fundraiser that you can hold, sell snacks or whatever it is, that can give you the money to support some of the things you want to do. This is a lot to take in. Where do you start? Glad you asked. The first place that I would start is that very first question I asked you when we started this presentation about decentering. I would want you to think about what's currently on your plate. What do you currently have that if you really sat and thought about it, students could do? Really sit and think about that and think about why you don't trust them or don't trust them with certain things. I have a couple of resources at educatingwithgrace.com/shop that really help you with this decentering process, but also give you some great tools to develop your student leadership program. Okay, the Decenter the Teacher task sheet, the leadership application, your leader evaluations, your sectional and small group expectations, and I literally lay them out. These are the exact resources I give my student leaders and the members, so everybody's on the same page. And then I also have a leadership check-in that you can use to just check the pulse of your leadership and see how things are going, okay? All of these resources are available to you on the website. There's also the opportunity for you to purchase like the bundle, where you can buy all 5 of these for like $15. So I encourage you to visit the website and check out everything that's there. When you purchase these resources, it gives you personal editable copies of each of the documents. So you can edit it, change the questions around any way you want. And you'll also have the opportunity, if you visit my Linktree, you'll have the opportunity to revisit this presentation to get some ideas or maybe some things you may have missed. All right. So after you viewed this, I encourage you to message me. You can send me an email. You can message me on Instagram or Facebook. Message me and let me know something that was a great takeaway for you, or one thing that you can implement right away. I want to see your feedback. I want to see how you are doing with everything. Okay. It has certainly been my pleasure to spend just a few moments with you to talk about student leadership and developing student leaders in performing ensembles. If you have any questions, feel free to shoot me an email at educatingwithgrace@gmail.com. All right, thanks.